The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, has identified 12 crypto tokens as securities in a lawsuit against Binance. The tokens in question were sold on Binance's platform, but were not registered with the SEC. The SEC alleges that Binance engaged in a scheme to sell unregistered securities to U.S. investors, with an estimated value of over $780 million. This lawsuit is part of the SEC's ongoing crackdown on cryptocurrencies and other digital assets that violate securities laws. The 12 tokens identified as securities by the SEC include some of the most popular cryptocurrencies, such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. Binance has not
Fed will hike interest rates this month. Bitcoin fell about 4% in the past 24 hours. It was worth a little less than $41,000. Meanwhile, Ether dropped by more than 5% since yesterday, and XRP fell a more modest 1%. All right, let's also talk about some of the headlines. First, an update on the latest crypto donations flowing into Ukraine. Elliptic estimates that the country received about $56 million worth of crypto as of Friday morning. That includes donations in Bitcoin, Ether, and Dogecoin, among others. Ukraine DAO also raised nearly $6 million with the auction of an NFT. Those funds will go to nonprofits helping those affected by the invasion. For all the latest on the war in Ukraine, including the money and resources pouring into the nation, head over to CNBC.com. Cardholders of sanctioned Russian banks will not be able to use Binance. The crypto exchange is holding firm on its pledge not to ban Russian users as a whole, but the company said on Thursday that cards issued by sanctioned Russian banks could not be used on the platform. Binance also said that it was taking steps to restrict the access of sanctioned individuals. The surge in crypto use in Russia has sparked a fierce debate. Lawmakers have expressed concern that crypto could be used to skirt sanctions. And on the other side, some in the crypto community argue that banning a select group of people from using crypto is antithetical to the technology's purpose. The co-founder of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong, tweeted about this today, saying that a ban on crypto in Russia would harm regular people who oppose the invasion. It would leave them without a lifeline as the country's currency plummets in value. Kraken CEO Jesse Powell expressed the same concern on Twitter earlier this week, saying that Kraken wouldn't freeze Russian accounts without a legal requirement to do so. Fellow host Kate Rooney caught up with Powell yesterday and asked him about that decision.
Joining me now, Jesse Powell, CEO of Kraken. Jesse, great to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
A lot to talk about. Crypto is very much in the global conversation right now. What do you think the role of cryptocurrencies are right now on the global stage, particularly with everything that's going on between Russia and Ukraine right now?
Yeah, I think we're really starting to see the true use case of Bitcoin for the world. You know, just a few weeks ago, we had a great example in Canada, an example that we didn't think we would see in the Western world. I think gave people something to pay attention to other than the price, an actual use case where Canada sanctioned its own citizens and they were shut off from their bank accounts. And, some people had to turn to Bitcoin as the rail of last resort to pay their bills during that time. And now with Russia, the Russian people have lost, half of their net worth, half of the value of their currency. There are runs on ATMs in Russia and Ukraine, and people are turning to Bitcoin as, again, this financial rail of last resort that doesn't depend on the legacy banking system to serve them, which often hits these bottlenecks and can't perform under extreme pressure.
And do you think that's helping the price of Bitcoin? We've seen it go up significantly in the face of what's going on, while the rest of U.S. equities, at least, were falling yesterday. Is that helping the bull case for Bitcoin?
We've looked at the numbers, and we don't think the growth in the price is so much due to buyers in Russia and Ukraine, so much as it is the example that's being set with Bitcoin and the use case that's being proven out of Bitcoin and people becoming more bullish as the world becomes more volatile.
Got it. So not necessarily demand from those places, but it is helping sort of the sentiment around the asset class.
That's right.
And there have been requests from government officials in Ukraine, at least. There was a tweet, for example, by the Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine asking crypto exchanges to block addresses of all Russian users. Kraken has said, no, you guys are not doing that. Why not?
That's right. I mean, we don't take a position around the world against ordinary citizens. We do, of course, follow the standard financial services regulations, the OFAC sanctions. We're closely following executive orders from the White House. And where we are required to do so legally, we will freeze the accounts of any individual identified, or should the State Department or OFAC roll out sanctions countrywide like they have in Iran or North Korea, then of course we would be compelled to comply with that. But as far as sanctioning individuals, we haven't seen that work very well. I mean, as a private company, there would potentially be repercussions for us doing that voluntarily. Once you go to freeze someone's financial account, they're no longer able to pay their rent, pay their debts, buy food, support their family. It's a pretty extreme measure, and it's far beyond turning off someone's access to their music streaming service or, their photo sharing app. Shutting off someone's financial access, we take very seriously, and generally only do that at the request of a government agency, with the formal legal requirement to do so. And we don't believe that, the majority of Russian people support this invasion. And, the United States as well has been involved in numerous military conflicts around the world. I think most people in the United States would not support those actions. And so, I'm happy that as an American citizen, when we invaded Iraq and when we invaded Afghanistan, that I didn't have my bank account turned off and my brokerage account seized, because I don't have anything to do with that. And I think ordinary Russian citizens, either they don't know what's happening, they don't support what's happening, or they're being subjected to a tremendous amount of propaganda inside the country and just don't know what to believe. And I think to put additional pressure on those people removes the ability for them to fight internally for what they believe in, removes their ability to leave the country if they feel like things aren't going the way that they like anymore, they don't believe in the regime anymore. So it's a pretty extreme measure for us to take. And we obviously don't have all the information that the State Department has or other countries have about the situation. And so it's a bit too far, I think, for us to go and impose sanctions on individual users really without the requirement to do so.
And what would be the big ask from regulators? Is there anything that the U.S. or global regulators could say that would require Kraken to really change that stance?
Sure. I mean, they could do what they've done for Iran or North Korea and roll out, through legal process, these embargoes or countrywide sanctions. And we would, of course, be compelled to comply with those rules as a regulated financial service and as a company who's headquartered in the United States.
I think a lot of people hear sanctions on Russia and assume that that does apply to the regular citizen there. What is the distinction? Can you sort of describe that to our audience who might think that despite sanctions, why are you still able to operate there when you might not be able to operate in other countries like Iran or North Korea, for example?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really up to the government how far they want to go with the sanctions. I think we didn't have the kind of economic connections to Iran or North Korea that we have with Russia. So that might be one driving force. Obviously, we're buying a lot of energy from Russia, and that has explicitly been exempted from the sanctions. So, Russia is currently free to spend their energy as a currency. It's just that the Russian banking system, the central bank, many of their banks have been excluded from the SWIFT system, which is the system of international payments and wire transfers. And so their banking system effectively has been cut off from the rest of the world. They've also identified several, high-ranking political figures as people who've been targeted for sanctions. But, the individual people generally are free to continue transacting with the rest of the world.
Kraken and a lot of the global exchanges are subject to some of the same restrictions and regulations as banks for the most part. Yet there's been a lot of talk about cryptocurrencies as a possible way to get around sanctions. Is that possible? And is there really a way that some in Russia could use exchanges to really skirt sanctions? Is that a viable concern?
Well, I mean, in the case of Russia, we're talking about the central bank and the banks, which I think, any meaningful amount of money to them could not be moved through cryptocurrency. I mean, they're not liquid ruble markets. So, even if they were able to, they'd have to convert that to dollars somehow first and get into the dollar markets. Obviously, they're currently prevented from moving money around the world through their banking system. So I think it would be extremely difficult for them to move any kind of meaningful amount of money through cryptocurrency at this point, it's also extremely traceable. And I think it would be pretty clear through the tools that are available where this money is originating from and where it's going. And if at any point that money touched a sanctioned individual or country, it would have to be frozen according to the rules that are in place now.
So Kraken would be the one to have to freeze that account. Is that right?
If it came through our platform, that's right.
Right. Senator Warren and other Democrats yesterday wrote a letter to Janet Yellen in the Treasury Department about the possibility of cryptocurrencies and their role in potentially getting around sanctions. Why do you think they're so worried, if that's the case, and if exchanges are cooperating with global regulators?
I think it's a misunderstanding, really. I think a lot of politicians don't understand how cryptocurrency works. They don't understand how regulated the space already is. I think they have this perspective of 10 years ago when it was a very nascent technology. And, it's come a long way, and it's a regular part of life for tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people today. And it's a heavily regulated industry, and it's heavily traceable. And I think politicians just haven't caught up with where we really are, and they have an outdated view of the whole situation.
So it does seem like people are looking to cryptocurrencies as a store of value. One side of that is stable coins and cryptocurrencies like Tether, anything really pegged to the price of the dollar. What are you seeing in terms of demand when it comes to coins like Tether?
Yeah, generally, people tend to convert back into these stable coins, quote unquote stable coins, in times of high volatility, when they want to sit out the market, they don't want to hold a position in a particular cryptocurrency. And rather than going back into real traditional US dollars, which we also support, they hold the stable coin because the coin gives them more flexibility. For example, if they want to move the coin between different crypto platforms, they're able to do that very quickly. On a Saturday night when the wire transfer system is closed, you can move USDT or USDC from one exchange to another in a matter of minutes. And that gives you a lot more flexibility and convenience than exists in the traditional financial system, not to mention the fees are much less. So I think people tend to stay in those stable coins just because it's a better version of dollars for their life.